Hi, everybody. Welcome to Immigration Talk, episode number 10, with myself, immigration lawyer John Khosravi, and my wonderful associate, Anya Segeva. How are you doing, Anya?
I'm okay, John. Happy New Year, everyone. Last time we were recording just before the New Year, but we were so busy and forgot to to mention that.
No
So
problem. And,
yeah,
and we're recording this in early January. You're dealing with the snowstorm I've seen that's holding things up on the East Coast.
it's okay. It's been a bit of snow yesterday, but now the daycare is open today, so thank God, life is going on. So
So
yeah.
wonderful. Today we're going to talk about some updates with USCIS. One about their flexibility in responding to notices of intent to deny, appeals, and RFEs, requests for evidence. We're going into detail about that. We're going to talk about the expedite requests for nurses who have EADs, work authorization documents, or employment authorization documents, and then talking about marriage case expedites. We're going to focus on expediting marriage cases, whether with USCIS or at the embassy, throughout the month of January. So see us on social media on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're watching this. We're gonna have a bunch of information, articles on LinkedIn, and we're gonna be updating the website page, just talking about different types of cases, expedited situations for marriage green card cases. And this week, the first week of January, it's going to focus on the K3 visa. So we're going to talk about the end. But Anya, this USCIS flexibility situation is really awesome. They're extending it again. Could you talk about what that's all about?
Yes, we have again we have great news. So I'm not sure it's like 8 times or 9 times that USA
Yeah.
does that since the pandemic started.
Mhm.
But again, they extended the flexibility, and they gave additional time to people to respond to their request for evidence. Um, N14 is this like request for evidence for naturalization cases in the layman term. Notices of intent to deny, intent to revoke, rescind, notices of intent to terminate, and certain motions to reopen.
Mhm.
So now this new policy is extended up until March 26, 2022. And everything that I just mentioned, now we have 60, right, John? 60 extra days to
Yeah.
reply to those,
So
right?
it's really important because one is when people get these like RFEs, which is the biggest example, request for evidence on an immigration case with USCIS. Normally it's 87 days they give you to respond. Some cases only 30 days, like a notice of intent to deny, many times only 30 days, which means you have to rush and get things done really fast. And adding to the fact that USCIS usually mails you a copy and then the post office takes a week, if it's a 30-day deadline, you have even less time than that. So this is really important for me that this becomes normal. It's not be a flexibility because 30 days is not enough to respond to these kind of things when you have like a waiver, a 601 waiver, or something like that. But you get 60 days past the day that the initial due date was. So let's say USCI says you have 87 days. The 87th day ends on February 1st, 2022. You can add 60 days to that to make it almost like, instead of just around 3 months, make it 5 months. It gives you a lot of time to properly prepare your response without rushing and getting documents, because many times you might need a foreign document. Well, with COVID, they may be shut down. It may take a while. You need that extra time to make a difference. I had a case where a client's fingerprints were, he was a young guy, but his fingerprints just weren't going in the system. And they couldn't improve his adjustment of status until he got police records from the counties and cities he lived in or states in America to corroborate that he didn't have, a criminal history before they could prove adjustment of status because the biometrics was not working. Well, we contact a lot of these police departments. There's like, we're not, they were saying, right now, we're not doing these. We're not submitting these because of COVID. Well, if we had that shorter deadline, we would have really messed up. But the fact that they did this flexibility gave us time for the police departments to open up their systems and send us the certificates of clearances so we give it for adjustment of status and finish the case. So it's a godsend, but I think this needs to stay. But we get people contacting us. I had a gentleman last week emailed us saying he missed a deadline, how to request an extension. And I looked at the RFE and I said, well, you already have another 40 days, so just file it now. And he didn't realize this flexibility existed. So it's very important to get this information out there.
Right. We also, I think, John, you wanted to talk about the notice of appeal, right? The
Yeah, this was really interesting. And before the show, we were, going through this stuff, and Anya actually brought this to my attention. when you want to do a notice of appeal form I-290B or N-336, this is appealing a citizenship case decision. The previous flexibility extensions that USCIS had given said you only get 60 days for these from the day you receive the notice. So it's different from those other types of requests, how much time you get. But now they said, and they mentioned under previously announced flexibilities, USCIS considered a form I-290B or a form N-336 if the form was filed up to 60 calendar days from the issuance of the decision. So if you're appealing, they usually give you a 30-day window to file an appeal. And this extension said you get, before said you get 60 days from the time you get the notice, not from the deadline for filing a response. But now they say if such decision was issued between March 1st, 2020 and October 31st, 2021, that's going to be increased and it's going to be 90 days. The form was filed up to 90 days from the issuance. So that's a very interesting thing that changed. I didn't notice it. It's the thing. You gotta, every time USCIS sends something, you got to read every part of it. And this is at the very bottom. And we don't do too many appeals because thankfully we don't get too many denials, or we don't get any denials to meet this unless a client comes beforehand. So it's not something we typically handle on a day-to-day basis. But it's really important if we have this extra time to not rush and to develop a good answer to the government.
Yes, I just want to point out that this 90-day rule, right? It works only for the notices of appeal or and 336, right? Which is like naturalization
Yeah,
appeal, would say, right? And the decision has to be made between November 1st, 2021 and March 26th, 2022. So this
yeah,
90 days will work. If your decision was issued before November 1st, then it's still 60 days rule,
yeah.
right?
And by that point, you already expired. So it's actually maybe November 21st. Yeah. But I got to do the math in my head. But yeah, by the time you're
I'm
listening
good
to
with
this,
math,
plug
you
into
know.
whatever. But
Yeah.
that word inclusive is really key. So if the decision was on like the deadline is March 26, 2020, it includes that day. So the inclusiveness is really important because sometimes that one day makes all the difference. So that was really important to talk about this. And there's going to be more of these, it seems. In one sense, I hope there are more of these because the extension helps. But in the other sense, I want this COVID pandemic to end because we're all going crazy dealing with this situation.
I just got an email yesterday. I have a student loan, and they told me yesterday that they extended the flexibility for student loans. No, that now I have to start repaying back only in May,
Yeah,
and before it should be like February 1st. So it's still here. It's still going. I don't know if they're gonna extend it again, but
maybe go one more. Why not?
yeah, yeah, it's good. It's good. I love it. So we will see. We will
Very
see.
cool. So that's about flexibility. But the USCIS has done another thing, which they've given flexibility for employment authorization for nurses in particular who are healthcare workers. Could you talk about what that extension is about?
Yes. So there is new like USCIS guidelines on expediting EAD employment authorization documents for healthcare workers. So it only concerns healthcare workers, okay, and not all healthcare workers, but most of them. Okay, I will talk about this in more detail just a couple of minutes later. So it has to be renewal application. It doesn't apply to initial employment authorization documents, right? Only for renewal. And your EAD expires in 30 days, right? Or less, or has already expired. So under these circumstances, you may request the USCIS to expedite your renewal EAD application. So, and very important in this here is to provide evidence that you actually work, that where you work at the hospital, for example, right? So what can it be? It can be employment letter, right? Your recent pay stubs for like 1 or 3 couple past months, something like that. So and on USS website you can find like special. I will open it up. I forgot what it's exactly called. It's like guidelines on essential critical infrastructure workers, something like that. And there on the page 7, you can find who this new rule applies to. So it's physicians, dentists, psychologists, mid-level practitioners, nurses, emergency medical services personnel, assistants, aides, and so much more. So
Mhm.
much more people will qualify for this new EAD expedite role.
So that's wonderful. We need that kind of stuff. And if you're, if you're going through the adjustment of status process or other kind of work permits in the U.S. EADs, how long the delays are, and you're going crazy. And at least they're doing this for nurses and these healthcare workers who we need them. We can't have them leaving the hospital in their circumstances. But it's a mess how long EADs are taking. I just don't know why we even need EADs. It should be incident to status for everything. So if you file for adjustment of status, it should be automatic that you get a work permit. Why not? Why deal with this huge bureaucracy about it? All these fees that are getting added for no reason. But
Right.
that's my dream, but it's probably not going to happen. So I'll just deal with it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, maybe not so soon. We will
That's-
see. 2024 is coming, so we will see.
yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about is our program this month to talk about expediting marriage cases, and a lot of this actually applies to potentially other kinds of cases as well. But we're just focusing on that. We're going to have a whole run campaign this month talking about different ways you can expedite a marriage case, and every week we're going to focus on one area. Week one is about K3 visas. We'll talk about right now, but I'm going to do videos and long form content and TikToks and Instagram Reels and all that different stuff. And the second week, I think we're going to talk about expediting with the National Visa Center and the embassy, how that works. The third week, I have it written down, but what was the third week about? Do you recall? It's going to
Yeah,
be,
I wrote it yesterday in the newsletter. So yes, we're gonna talk about how to avoid like delays. It's kind of expediting your case too.
yeah,
If you avoid delays by good preparation. This is
yeah.
one thing. Yes,
Yeah,
that
we have
we're gonna talk
cases
about.
where they go to the NBC National Visa Center, and the NBC, especially now, they're taking like 2 or 3 months to review the documents submitted. If it doesn't get accepted the first time around, you're gonna have to resubmit and wait another 2 or 3 months. So even if you got an expedite of your I-130, it was fast by 3 or 4 months. You just added all that time over again with the National Visa Center. So the key is to be as fully documented prepared. And we're going to go through that, I think, week four about like all the main problems we see, whether it got birth certificates, marriage certificates, the affidavit of support, make sure translations are correct, even really dumb stuff with the NBC where when you upload documents, it has to be like a page up down. It can't be sideways or crooked because they'll say we can't accept this. The document is sideways. Well, it's like it's a PDF. You could redo it yourself. But the last thing you want to do is add 3 or 4 months of delay because you put the paper in sideways. So it seems like you need a lawyer for this, but yeah, you do because you need someone who has experience dealing with this craziness. So we're gonna go deep into that. And there was another expedite thing I can't
Yeah, and
remember, but
also we're gonna talk about how to expedite your case with USCIS, of course.
yeah,
Actually, now I'm waiting a call from them.
yeah,
We're
and,
trying
and
to expedite one of our cases, and yeah.
exactly, and it's a marriage case, but it's an I-24, and we'll talk about different examples of all this kind of stuff because I'm one of the main calls I'm getting right now is how do we expedite this case? I'm a green card holder. We're waiting 2 years for the I-130 to be approved. It's crazy timelines, especially at the California Service Center. And I'm not going to go out there and say everyone could do it. They're very difficult about expediting, but you never know if you don't try, and you might have an argument you're not even aware of. So it's worth a shot. We had an expedite approved for an I-130 where unfortunately the petitioner got, cancer. He had to do treatment. They said it's treatable, but he had to do surgery. And he's like, I want to have my wife here with me. So we have to fight a lot to get congressional help, all this kind of stuff. But get the I-130 approved in 3 months. I was a U.S. citizen. And then the case it was in East Asia, got the embassy to interview him a month and a half later. So all of a sudden, U.S. citizen marriage, consular processing altogether took like, 4.5 months. Should have taken a year and a half under current timelines, but we got it in and they're here together. Now he's going to go his treatment, but at least his wife's here with him. So this stuff's possible. The worse and sad the story is, the more it helps you expedite. But hopefully it's a balance of not being too much of a bad. Hopefully no one gets cancer, but hopefully it's bad enough where USCIS or the National Visa Center or whoever you're dealing with will accept it. So we're going to talk a lot about that. Stay tuned. We should have mentioned at the beginning, definitely like and subscribe wherever you're watching this so you can get these updates and information. It catches on all the different social media platforms, JQK Law for everything. But for TikTok, it's Immigration Lawyer John. I don't know, might be changing that name to be more inclusive. So Anya can come on the TikTok page too.
Yeah, I'm still in the process of downloading TikTok on my phone. I'm not even there yet. Yeah.
It's good how you learn a lot, but it just is always good information is bad information. I see people say mistakes on there too when I watch it. So you really want to always talk with a lawyer or maybe a couple lawyers, do your own research, maybe ask where does it say this in the rules, in the regulations, the statute that it says this. Unfortunately, the statute is so badly written, it's hard to even understand. Many times lawyers have to read it 4 or 5 times just to figure out what's going on. But you always want to go to the source first to see where it is and where it says this. Even USCIS.gov, their website has errors in there. I've caught several errors on TPS, temporary protected status, on some portions of IA24 about how to do it. They have their own errors in there, so it's hard to know who to trust. But you always want to try to find the statute, the regulations, go with the basic rules. And then, unfortunately, with immigration, a lot of stuff is just based on experience and luck. So, there's might be something there's no rule for, but we've seen in previous experience that they do it one way, but all of a sudden, you might get another officer who wants to do the other way, and all of a sudden you're like, "Wait, what happened? Everything changed." But that's immigration, unfortunately. That's the way it works. I was talking with a person yesterday at a consultation. Anya, I didn't tell you about this. He was applying for his spouse. Now we're talking about expediting and delays, but he actually got his green card through his mom. And at the embassy interview, his mom wasn't making enough money, so his brother found someone across the country who was a business associate. Said, "Could you be the affiliate support sponsor?" And they were really nice and said, "Okay." They went to the embassy, and embassy said, "No, this person lives too far away from where you're going to be living, so we can't accept that." There's no place in the regulation. It
Yeah.
specifically says in the regulations it could be anybody, doesn't have to be a family member, all this stuff. But the
Yeah,
embassy just
you just have to be either a lawful permanent resident or United States citizen, right?
that's
These are
it.
the two main
That's it.
requirements, and you have to have to make certain amount of money to be able to
Yeah, the
sponsor them.
basic. So, and it's so frustrating. I'm like, what did you do? He's like, well, my brother wrote a letter explaining, no, this person's close to our family. Please accept it. And then they finally accepted it, but they should have just proved on the spot. So these are the kind of things we see. Like this should be no issue at all. The regulations are clear on it, the statute laws, but they make up their own rules sometimes. So that's why you always want to prepare for the worst and try to be prepared for that.
Yeah, it's also it's from what we see, it also depends on the embassy, right?
Yeah,
So one embassy will say, "Yeah, we need like someone like family member, right?
yeah,
So that they can sign the sponsorship form." Some other embassy will say, "You're good as long as they make enough." You know,
that's it.
so
Yeah.
it's all very subjective. Um,
Yeah. Some embassies are really open about the domicile requirement. If you say, which is a requirement of the petitioner, like let's say the U.S. citizen spouse, if they're living abroad with the foreign spouse, if they say we'll move to the U.S. together once the visa is granted for the husband or wife, they'll say, okay, that's fine. Because one of the requirements is that the U.S. spouse has to be either living here or about to live here. But other embassies will say, no, you have to go, the spouse to move to the United States, the U.S. citizen or green card holder, show a lease agreement, work, all that kind of stuff. Once you have that, send it to us, then we'll approve the visa. They have the flexibility of not doing that, but it varies. And so that makes it unreliable in this system. You think it's just filling out paperwork, filling out forms, but you're dealing with so many different bureaucracies. And this is one of the issues with the K3 visa that if you watch our videos, we're going to talk about. And actually, let's talk about it briefly right now. For the K3, you submit the I-130 petition to say, I have a foreign spouse I want to bring in. And then you also submit a form I-129F that says, I'm requesting K3. I want my spouse to come to the US sooner and apply for adjustment of status in the United States. So typically, we don't like doing K3s. One is because it's almost never approved, so it's a waste of time. But secondly, if it's approved, the person has to go through consular processing, come to the United States, then apply for adjustment of status. So it adds a lot of legal fees. And more importantly for me, is it adds a more bureaucratic issues, more dealing with the government. So the regular I-130, you deal with USCIS. Once approved, you deal with the embassy, and then you deal with Customs and Border Protection, CBP, at the airport when you're coming in, 3 agencies. But the K3, you're submitting two petitions to USCIS, you're dealing with the embassy, you're dealing with CBP, and then once here, you file adjustment of status application, dealing with USCIS again, and then you do an in-person interview in most cases. So you just add 3 different interactions with the US government, and each of these will go to different people, and each of them could make a mistake. And so that's why you balance out. Maybe the K3, which is not going to get approved, but if it is approved, you might save 3 months of time to see your spouse sooner, which is important. Everyone wants to be around their loved ones sooner, but then you have to wait extra 6 months, a year to get the green card and have 3 different additional interactions with the government and bureaucracy. which increases the chances of not only more fees and costs, but also mistakes happening. So it's like you got to balance all these different factors. And historically, we would never recommend the K3 unless clients pushed it. But because we've seen what's going on at the embassies and how delays are for immigrant visa cases, and sometimes K1 and K3 cases are getting interviews where marriage cases are not, we're opening it up and telling clients, yeah, this may be an option to pursue, especially because we've seen some cases when we submit the K3 request, the K3 doesn't get approved, the I-129F, but the I-130 gets expedited somehow. It's not in the books for them to do that, but it happens. So it may be worth doing, and we're going to be doing a lot of videos talking about that.
Right, and probably the what changed all that, right, is the pandemic. Because
Yeah,
before pandemic, we just, I think, John, you just posted statistics, right, like a
yeah,
couple of days ago. Yeah, it's been for 2020, there were like two K3 visas issued for the
yeah.
whole year, compared to spousal visas were like 55,000 visas for
Mhm.
2020. So you can imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah. But we got to do everything we can. That's the focus of this month. If K3 is a long shot, but it may make things faster, so let's do it. Requesting expedites, let's do it. Getting the documents together, let's do it. MVC, embassy, requesting expedites, requesting emergency interviews, whatever you can, you got to do it because we're all of us, we're not getting any younger. And a lot of couples they want to have kids here and stuff. They got to get this ball rolling, and it's very frustrating, especially if you're a green card holder. The California Service Center's timeline saying 3 years for pending I-130 based on LPR marriage. That's crazy. I don't think it really takes that long because
People get divorced sooner, than that.
yeah. So exactly. So it's a wild number to see. It's inappropriate, and sometimes, and we're not gonna get into this because we don't do lawsuits at our firm, but sometimes you just gotta sue, and that's something. If your LPR 130 is pending 2 years, that gets to the point where it's ridiculous. I mean, it's not reasonable, and you could potentially sue the government for unreasonable delay to say it shouldn't take that long to approve this case. It's not that complicated in I-130 that takes officers that long, and they're not getting that many I-130s necessarily for them to be that busy. So it doesn't make sense for a service center to give these kind of timeline numbers. I'm getting kind of heated because that's annoying. Because I can't imagine being separated from my wife and you being separated from your husband for all these years. Sometimes kids are an LPR F2A category. They might have minor children. In this example of the consultation I had yesterday, the guy had a young daughter that was born and his wife overseas. It's just not fair. And I told him, listen, you have a minor child. We have an expedite going ourselves. So, unfortunately, a gentleman, his 1 year old is having some health situations. We're saying, listen, we got to expedite this. We got to bring to America, get the healthcare that they need. And so it's just not fair. So you got to fight. And one thing that's happening is everyone's doing expedites right now, so they are overwhelmed. If you contact your congressperson, which is one step, they're getting 50 other, 500 other people asking the same thing. So they're going to be slow to respond. The higher chances of denial for your expedite, but you got to do what you got to do, and that's what the
It's
whole point is.
a very important thing about expediting, right? There are certain criteria, right,
Hmm.
for expediting the case. So not every single case qualifies for that. So I
Yeah,
just want you guys to understand this. But again, if you come to us and we assess your situation, we know what the right questions are to ask you, and
yeah.
to find if you have some reason for expedite.
Yeah,
You
we
know.
see so many times clients will go on one direction thinking this is important. Like, no, 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 there's a nugget, a fact right there that is really important. Let's get more information about that. Let's get evidence and documentation of that because they'll understand that many times it's going to be humanitarian based, unless we get some other kind of subcategory that they'll accept. But we move the humanitarian angle and explain what it is. And as I said in that example, the client had cancer there, they're having surgery, humanitarian reasons at work. I think we're going to get the expedite for this other client whose child, unfortunately, is having some health issues. That's got to be something that they'll expedite. If they don't, we're going to fight tooth and nail because it's inappropriate if they don't. So I think that one. So God forbid these things are actually happening, these extreme kind of stuff, but maybe they are. So we got to use that to your benefit. And sometimes you'll have something that's not as extreme, but it is important enough for human beings here to make it worth it. We have another expedite we're doing for a healthcare worker who's working with COVID patients, and she wants to have her spouse here because it's working 20-hour shifts with COVID people and going home. You want to have your loved one here. So I think it's worth arguing with them and say, listen, this person's giving up their life to save Americans. Let's at least have her husband not wait 2 years to get his I-130 approved. Let's do it maybe in a year. So we're not asking for too much here. Just let this person have some relief when they come back home. Wonderful. So, Anya, we'll be back again next week to talk more about different news updates and information. Is there anything you want to leave us with?
I wanted to add something, but I forgot. So
Oh,
probably
no
next
problem.
time.
That was not that look, man.
Yeah.
Well, as always, yeah, follow us on and subscribe on YouTube, the JQK Law Firm page. If you're interested in, having a consultation, fees do apply for consultations, but email us and briefly describe what the immigration issue is. So maybe we can give a quick answer, or maybe it's the kind of case we don't handle. For example, we don't do asylum cases. So let us know what you're doing and we'll take it from there. The email is info@jqqlaw.com. I'll see it myself, info@jqqlaw.com. And that'll be it. Thank you, Anya, for coming on again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Thank you everyone for watching. See you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.